This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to downrigger@montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. So glad all of you are along with me today, all around the United States, around the world, and of course, right here in the great state of Montana. Before we get started, want to first give a quick shout out, as I always do, to our active military all around the world. I really appreciate the fact that you guys and gals are out there protecting our country and the world, but yet when you get a little time off, you listen to this podcast. And that means a lot to me and I know to all of us here. So thank you very much for your service. And always good to hear from you all around as you serve our country. Now, let's get into what we're doing. We're starting a new series, and this is going to be a really interesting series, and I think one that's going to be very, very useful to you hunters here in Montana and those of you out of state that are planning to come to Montana and hunt with us. What I want to do is go around to all the different regions of Montana. When I say regions, these are the FWP, the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks regions. Often you'll see that region map, and there's 7 regions. And so we're going to go through each of the regions in a series of podcasts so that we'll have time to kind of take a deep dive into each region. I'm going to start with the kind of the center or the south center of Montana, and that's Region 5. Matt Ladd is the Region 5 Wildlife Manager. And what we want to do with Matt, as well as the other folks that we're going to talk to in future podcasts, is really just get a good idea of what the hunting is going to be like. And what I'm going to do, when you go to this podcast, whether you pick this up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're at, YouTube, there's a podcast description where you can read about what the podcast is about and that. As you go further down the podcast description, you're going to see an area that's highlighted. It says links. There's going to be a link to the Region 5 2024 hunting forecast. And that you can either pull it up now and follow along with Matt and I, or you can just sit back and listen and then refer to it later. It's got some great information for you there, give you some good information about where the game is, how the game in the different species is looking as far as population numbers, things like that. So now let's bring in Matt Ladd. Again, Matt is Region 5 Wildlife Manager for the great state of Montana. They're in Region 5. Matt, thanks so much for joining us and spending so much time with us. I know you are one busy man this time of year, aren't you?
Yes, we are busy this time of year with hunting season already going. We have a lot of animals coming in to get checked in, but Downrigger, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show with you guys and get a little bit of information out to the folks here across the state and across the United States and anybody listening.
Well, we indeed do appreciate it. So let's get into a little bit about Region 5. But before we get into great detail, I'd like to hear a little bit more about you, just so folks can have an idea of where you're from originally, how you got into the FWP, why you chose to do this line of work, and what you do now.
Yeah, sure. I was actually born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the early 70s, and my family moved back to Montana during my youth. My dad went down to Louisiana to go to grad school and vet school. He was a large animal vet, so I'm a country kid. I grew up out in the country, and anyway, my mom and dad had a practice in western Montana, and actually grew up in the country around Stevensville after we'd moved back, and graduated from Stevensville High School. So I'm a Yellow Jacket. Then I went on to college at MSU. I was at MSU for about a year, and then got an opportunity to go to the University of Minnesota and work on a degree in fisheries and wildlife. And I did that. And after I completed the degree there in Minnesota, I came back and worked in ag business in Northeast Montana for about 9 years before coming to work for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Working for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks had always been a goal and a passion of mine. And I was really excited to get the opportunity to fulfill that goal and dream. I was originally hired on as a game warden, and I spent a real short period of time in Region 6 before getting assigned to the Billings Warden District down here in Region 5. And I've been in Region 5 ever since. I never left. I worked with the Enforcement Division for about 15 and a half years. I was a game warden, an investigator, and a sergeant. And then just about 3 years ago, I got the opportunity to apply for the Region 5 Wildlife Manager position, and was fortunate enough to get that position. And I would have to say the transition to Wildlife Manager from the Enforcement Division is not a common career path in FWP, but here we are. And I've really enjoyed the jobs I've had working for the department, and it's been a ride, I can tell you that.
Yeah, you've just kind of done a little bit of everything there. When you say you were in the ag business, what part of the ag business were you in Montana?
Yeah, so Northeast Montana is, huge spring wheat, winter wheat country. And I managed grain elevators for Cenex Harvest States up there for about 9 years, and worked in that realm, buying grain from farmers. We also provided feed and, crop chemicals and different products that farmers and ranchers needed in Northeast Montana. So it's kind of a small world up there. You get to know everybody pretty fast when you work in ag business. And anyway, that's what I was doing up there. And we were shipping about 12 million bushels of grain out annually to export.
Wow.
So we were busy people up there.
Yeah, that is truly another one of the great spots in Montana. Well, now, Matt, let's talk a bit about Region 5. Can you give us just a brief description of where Region 5 is located in Montana, and maybe a little bit about what the region is like there?
Absolutely. Region 5 lies in south central Montana, and it extends from the Crazy Mountains on the west side to the Bighorn River on the east, and from the Snowy Mountain Divide on the north side of the region down to the Wyoming border. So it's as far as the regions go, it's a fairly square chunk of ground. But yeah, it lies directly in south central Montana. We have mountainscapes and high elevation peaks, like, for example, Granite Peak is 12,807 feet, and that's the highest peak in Montana, and that's in our Beartooth Range on the south portion of the region. We also have the east side of the Crazy Mountains and the south side of the Big and Little Snowy Mountains, the east end of the Little Belt Mountains, the Pryor Mountains, and the Bull Mountains. So we have quite a few ranges here in the region. Our main tributaries in the region are the Yellowstone River, the Musselshell River, the Boulder River, the Stillwater River, and the Clark's Fork of the Yellowstone River, not to be confused with the Clark's Fork River over in Region 2.
Right.
And then also, of course, the pretty infamous Bighorn River is on our eastern side. So We have diverse landscapes, including ag lands, shortgrass prairie, sagebrush grasslands, rimrock buttes, cottonwood river bottoms, ponderosa pine savannas, river breaks, and even some clay deserts down in the Priors. Our outdoor scene here is really diverse downrigger. I mean, we kind of have a little bit of everything, and it's really kind of a transition area in Montana from mountains to prairie.
Yeah, for those of you that are listening out of state that may not have ever come to Montana, that's one of the things I absolutely love about our great state is how diverse it is. And you just heard from Matt here for Region 5, very diverse area. Let's talk about hunting here. Now, as far as the hunting goes, maybe you can give us an idea of how much the region consists of public lands that are available for folks to hunt on and private land opportunities. Now, that may be a little difficult to tell us exactly how much private land opportunities are available because, of course, that's up to the landowner. But maybe just do the best you can. Give us kind of a rough idea of if you want, maybe in percentage or whatever, of what's public and what's private that is available for folks to hunt in Region 5.
Yeah, downrigger, I sure can. I have to give a little credit to Adam Messer. He's one of our GIS guys in Helena, and I asked him this question yesterday, and I tell you what, he pumped out an answer for me pretty quick. But Region
awesome.
5, yeah, it was great. Region 5 is about 60.89% private, about 18.71% public. The Crow Tribe Indian Reservation is about 20.24% of the region. And then about 0.14% of the region is water, whether it's river, lake, pond, etc. We have private land cooperators enrolled in the block management program here. There's about 105 this year, and that gives folks access to approximately 509,000 acres of properties to hunt various species of game on. Some of our private land here in the region can be difficult to get access to, but we have many landowners that allow access and hunting opportunities, and we are very fortunate in that way as well.
Yeah, well, you hunters that are listening, over 500,000 acres, I'd say that you're going to find something out there, or you better anyway. So let's look at those opportunities. Now, the FWB put out a great series. I talked about it just a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, called the 2024 Hunting Forecast. And they did that for each region in the state, which, by the way, for those of you listening, as I said, go down to the links area of the podcast description, and you can pull that up and take a look at it. That's going to give you some really good information. So let's start, I guess, with one of the more popular animals that hunters seek out in Montana, or at least the superstar that tends to get a lot of the press, and that's bull elk. Talk a bit about bull elk hunting opportunities that hunters can find in Region 5, and then just kind of in general, the elk numbers for Region 5, and maybe talk about how those population numbers compare with, say, previous years.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start out with elk numbers a little bit and just give folks a kind of general overview. Elk numbers in Region 5 are really good. We have healthy elk herds. They've been steadily increasing over the past 20 years. Some herds seem to be stabilizing a little bit while others continue to grow. We have some bull elk hunting opportunities using the general license, and some require a permit in conjunction with the general license. As we talked about before, a lot of the region is private land, and a large proportion of the public land is either not a lot of it's not really good elk habitat. For example, like the Beartooth Range, a lot of that is granite and conifer trees, and it just doesn't have a lot for elk to eat. Now, along the peripheral of that range and many of our mountain ranges, there are really good foothill environments and really good habitat for elk, and a lot of that ground is private ground. Elk are common across most of the region. However, private lands around, like the Snowy Bull Mountains and Crazy Mountains and the Beartooth Front are where most of the bull hunting opportunities occur. Folks do harvest a few bulls on public land. With that said, we do have some really good block management cooperators with bull elk hunting opportunities and some private landowners who allow bull elk hunting as well. I would mention here for hunters to not overlook cow hunting opportunities in Region 5. We all know that elk meat is great table fare, and we have over-the-counter cow elk licenses available in most of our hunting districts. And a lot of those hunting districts, people can buy a general elk license and then 2 additional cow elk licenses. So if they're lucky to harvest 3 elk, they're going to have plenty of meat for quite a while.
Oh yeah, and great meat it is too. So yeah, for those of you that just want to fill the freezer, this could be the one of the great regions for you. How about as far as regulation changes? I know those can be hard to keep up with. For those of you listening, by all means, always, get your regulations, go over them before you decide where you're going to hunt, and then make sure you understand those regs real well. So do that regardless of, what we talk about here, because things do change. But is there any major reg changes that you have seen that maybe folks need to watch out for?
If folks haven't hunted in Region 5 for the past 3 years or so, they certainly need to dive in and take a look at the regulations. About 3 years ago, we did a regulation simplification exercise. And when we did that, we consolidated some hunting districts, changed some boundaries. A lot of the regulations regarding, species and what license to use and that are much the same, but anytime you change boundaries and stuff, things can change a little bit. So I would really encourage people, mostly if they haven't been here for the last 3 years, to check those new hunting districts out and see what those new boundaries are. Other than that, for folks that have been hunting, most people are getting pretty used to it by now who have been hunting here. We haven't changed much as far as what people can harvest. Have had a few changes with the archery. During that same exercise, we changed the archery permit. The state went away from the 900 archery elk permit, and Region 5 kind of has its own archery elk permit that's good for most the districts in the region. So for folks that, are local hunters and want to kind of just hunt around Region 5, they have a real great opportunity to utilize that elk archery permit and hunt kind of some different types of habitat, from mountains to prairie to, some ponderosa pine hills and things like that around the region.
Okay. Now, I'm going to make our listeners do a little of their own research here too. But is there any, say, 1 or 2 districts out there that in Region 5 that come to mind for elk in Region 5 that you would say, okay, you might want to try this region first or this district first?
Yeah, the Snowy Mountains, we share the Snowy Mountains with Region 4, and that's the Little Snowy Mountains and the Big Snowy Mountains. Our boundaries on that mountain divide that kind of runs east and west across the north part of the region. That elk hunting district is 535 up there. In the Snowy Mountain complex, there's about 10,000 head of elk. So the Snowy Mountain complex is kind of an island mountain range. So if you can imagine 60, 70 miles wide by 30, 40 miles from top to bottom, a mountain range that has 10,000 head of elk in it, that's a lot of elk.
Yeah.
A lot of those elk are existing kind of on the east and west ends of those ranges. Many of them are on private land, but without access. But we do have, some private landowners and some ag guys that are focused on agriculture that allow a fair amount of elk hunting. Later in the season, as we start to experience more winter weather and in the shoulder seasons as well. Those elk tend to move down onto the prairies, and folks have been getting into those elk. Kids and ladies and gentlemen have been getting into those elk and killing their first elk, and a number of cow elk, and helping some of those landowners out that are getting impacted by some of those large numbers. So I'd say 535 is a really good one to look at. Hunting District 580, again, kind of limited with private land access, but there's a lot of elk there. We have elk along the Beartooth Front, like I said, out in those foothills on some private lands that can be really good opportunities as well. Bull Mountains, a lot of that's private, but there is a pretty good herd of elk in the Bull Mountains too, which is south and east of Roundup, essentially. So yeah, a lot of elk in Region 5. It's just a matter of getting on a place where you can harvest one.
Well, that's some good advice there. And, be sure and take advantage of the block management and the hunt planner that the FWP has online. I think that would give you a great idea. We're going to take just a quick break. And when we come back, let's take a look at whitetail deer in Region 5 and find out what's going on there. We'll do that right after this. Hey, I want to tell you a bit about one of the great businesses that is responsible for making this podcast possible. I'm talking about my friends at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They're a well-established Montana company with origins starting way back to 1977. They've been proudly serving the Missoula community and, far beyond that since then. Yeah, so no matter where you're listening, they can help you. Now, again, if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that some of the things Superior Hardwoods is most known for are their extraordinary flooring lines. In fact, a majority of those are manufactured right there in their lumber yard in Missoula. And speaking of flooring, they just introduced the Timeless Pre-Finish series. Now, this is a series designed to simplify the overwhelming task of remodeling and replacing the old worn-out flooring in your home. This new series allows you to effortlessly transform any room pretty much instantly. This flooring is made in America and comes in pre-finished maple, hickory, white oak, red oak, ash, and reclaimed oak. It's just beautiful. It has a superior quality sealer and matte finish to it. Now, this totals 6 coats of durable protection on the floor. But along with all their different flooring lines and their acres of reclaimed beams and lumber, they also offer fantastic products to complete your remodel. Thousands of feet of alder molding and hundreds of square feet of stunning antique paneling. Just beautiful stuff. That's going to make your home feel special to you and your family and friends every time they come see you. It's kind of amazing when you think about it, but when you work with the folks at Superior Hardwoods of Montana, you'll be able to create a look for your home that says who you really are to all who stop by. I guess what I'm trying to say is it completes your remodel project to the point that your house just doesn't have a new look or updated look to it. No, it becomes much more than that. Not just a house you live in, but it is now uniquely your home. And it'll feel that way, not just because the project is completed. No, it will feel that way every time you and your family and friends walk through the door. That, my friends, is the difference that Superior Hardwoods of Montana makes. Stop by their showroom in Missoula, Montana today if you can, or give them a call at 406-251-2272, or just visit their website. It's a great way to get to know them at superior-hardwoods.com. That's superior-hardwoods.com, and let them guide you through the woods. We are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, talking with Matt Ladd of Region 5. He's the wildlife manager there. Let's get into whitetail deer, Matt. How are the population numbers looking for those, and where are the best spots to find whitetail?
Yeah, so probably around 2007, 2008, we had a pretty significant EHD die-off. which EHD is a lot like blue tongue. It's a disease deer get that's transmitted by a midge, and they get bitten and they die from it. Anyway, we had a pretty significant die-off in those years, and then they were kind of starting to recover some, and then they got hit again with it. It happens a lot along river corridors, so our whitetail numbers were really kind of down for quite a while. They're starting to come back around. This year, we're seeing some populations that were fairly stable, meaning not really an increase or a decrease, but at least they're maintaining their own. In areas where we had some really low numbers last year, we're starting to see those numbers pick up a little bit. So we're seeing some slight increases. The late winter of 2023, I don't know if folks recall, but we had some late spring, really harsh weather in 2023 that really impacted whitetails along the Beartooth front. They're kind of starting to bounce back a little bit, but it's been a slow process. I guess for folks that are looking for whitetail numbers and places they can go after whitetails, I would certainly recommend the Yellowstone Bighorn and Muscle-Shell river bottoms. That's probably where we have the best opportunities for whitetails now, and numbers in which people are going to be able to kind of find some and get some harvest.
Sounds like for whitetail, we're looking at maybe seeing a bit of a comeback there. As far as, say, buck to doe ratios, do you have anything there?
Yeah, buck to doe ratios are pretty good. Those aren't numbers that we focus on real closely with whitetails, but a lot of our areas are probably 20 to 30 and maybe even up to 40 bucks per 100 does. So those numbers are pretty good. I think people have they'll be able to find some bucks to harvest if that's their goal.
Okay. Let's talk mule deer. Now, from the data I've seen in the various hunting districts around there, and that the numbers for muleys has been declining. Looks like mostly CWD. Talk a bit about that. Maybe give us a brief description of what CWD is. I know we hear that a lot of times, but often folks say, I hear the acronym CWD, but what the heck is it? So maybe talk a little bit about what's going on with your mule deer population there and CWD.
Downrigger, mule deer numbers have been declining in many areas across the state and in Region 5. We don't really have much, for example, we don't have much antlerless hunting opportunities for mule deer in Region 5. We do have a few B tags, but it's pretty limited. Recently, we took antlerless opportunities off the general license for all of our districts that allowed it. We still have a couple of districts with antlerless opportunities for youth hunters. Speaking to CWD, we really can't. First of all, I guess I'll talk about what CWD is. Chronic wasting disease, also known as CWD, is a type of spongiform encephalopathy. And I know that's kind of a mouthful, but it's much like mad cow disease or Jacob's Crutchfield disease in humans. So it's a disease that affects the brain and central nervous system. It's caused by a protein prion, which can persist on the landscape and be transmitted from animal to animal. When an animal dies out on the landscape, those prions can actually be absorbed by the vegetation and exist in vegetation that the animals later eat and get it. So it's a very difficult disease to eliminate from the environment. Again, the prion negatively impacts the brain and central nervous system of deer, elk, and moose are the main species affected here in Montana, both species of deer, mule deer, and whitetail. Symptomatic animals don't really show signs for very long before succumbing to the disease. So a lot of people probably are never really going to notice that a deer is sick just because they don't show the symptoms very long and they're dead. It affects mule deer a little more than other species. We have had some positive samples of elk and white-tailed deer and mule deer. We really can't say that, what our total prevalence is across the region. And prevalence, by prevalence, I mean how common it is in the populations, mainly because we don't have a lot of samples in some of our districts. We can't really attribute the decline in mule deer to CWD. Region-wide, we have a prevalence that we believe is around 2%, and that would really not align with the long-term declines we've been seeing in mule deer. We do have prevalence rates of 6 to 8% in a couple of our southern districts, but again, even that higher prevalence rate doesn't really account for the declines that we've seen. There are areas of the region we have what I would call hot spots, meaning many positive samples from a small geographic area. But our long-term trends show that mule deer have been declining for about 20 plus years. And we discovered CWD in Montana in 2017, and Region 5 was the place that we discovered it in the southern portion of the region. We do believe that there's other factors, maybe changes in weather, changes in habitat, especially after some significant fires and damage to important sagebrush winter range that are impacting mule deer. A controversial theory is that increased elk occupancy is impacting mule deer. We don't really have good data or a study for this part of the state, but anecdotally, it does appear that where elk numbers have made big increases, mule deer have declined significantly, and that could be attributed to maybe some overuse of winter range habitat that mule deer rely on. Yeah, so that's CWD in a nutshell. And I tell you, folks really want to dig in and do some research on their own. We have quite a bit of information on our website regarding CWD and CWD management, and also a CWD management map that shows where all the positive samples and all the samples have been taken, but also where all the positive samples for CWD have come from.
Do you think it'd be fair to say then, Matt, that, for mule deer hunters, Region 5 probably not going to be a first choice? Do you think the population numbers are kind of going against them there, or what's your overall thought?
Yeah, I would say for hunters, it's probably not a top choice. Some of our better mule deer hunting is probably in the northern part of the region. But again, hunting District 535 that we talked about earlier with the elk, our hunting opportunity in 535 is permitted for mule deer bucks. Every region has a permit unit for mule deer bucks, and 535 happens to be ours. That's kind of a good place if you draw that permit. But overall, yeah, mule deer hunting in Region 5 it wouldn't be my go-to destination. I guess I would say that. Okay.
All right. Fair enough. Let's move on now to pronghorns, antelope, as a lot of people call them. So pronghorns in Region 5, can you talk a bit about how they're doing and what hunting districts probably are the most or best bet, you would say, for that? And also maybe tell us about regulations for pronghorn, if there's any significant changes there we need to watch out for.
Yeah, sure. Pronghorns across the region are, again, pretty stable from where they've been in the last few years. We have had some slight increases in our herds. In the eastern part of our region here, we've seen some increases in the numbers. Our northern herds had a large die-off due to EHD at about that same time I talked about when whitetails were severely impacted in that 2007, 2008 timeframe. And then again, they were kind of hit again. They were kind of starting to recover. There's been some information that EHD can really affect reproduction in pronghorns for the ones that actually survive it. And so it's kind of a double impact to pronghorns. If they don't die from it, sometimes they're not viable in reproduction afterwards. So with that, I would say that our pronghorns have recovered to some degree. We're still below a lot of our long-term averages for what we had in those districts. I would say we do have some really good pronghorn opportunities as far as access. A lot of our block management places in Region 5, especially our central, eastern, and northern hunting districts, offer some fantastic pronghorn hunting opportunity. Again, thanks to private landowners and block management cooperators, we have those places for folks to go. As far as regulations go, we haven't had any real significant changes. We did do a little bit of redistricting in that exercise we did about 3 years ago, and consolidated some of the districts, and the central districts were made a little bit larger. And we kind of did that based on what the habitat was like. If the habitat was real similar, a lot of those districts were lumped into maybe one district or 2-3 districts. So that's kind of the big thing. So if people haven't been hunting in here or hunting in Region 5 for about the last 3 years, they might want to pay pretty dang close attention to that, as they should to the regulations any year in and year out. But every year we have slight adjustments to the quota numbers depending on what our numbers look like. We fly antelope counts in July. So we kind of wait to see what our fawn recruitment is, and then we fly those counts, and every year we adjust those numbers up or down. We had some real minor adjustments. We increased some doe fawn licenses in some of our areas, and so overall, not a whole lot of changes to the regs there.
But overall, for pronghorn, Region 5's a pretty good spot, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is a pretty good place, and especially for folks that aren't wanting to travel all the way to the eastern part of the state. Region 5 is a pretty good spot. I mean, with our block management and, like I said, the access pieces we have, and just some of our habitat we have here, it's not a bad place to come and look for an antelope. So,
let's get into bird hunting a bit. Now, before I even start there, when you look at Region 5, what would you say? Is it more noted for big game hunting as opposed to birds, whether it be waterfowl or upland game bird, or are birds more favored by hunters for Region 5, or is it pretty much balanced?
It does kind of depend on where you are in the region, but as I look at the region as a whole, I would say that we're pretty balanced here in Region 5. We have some tremendous waterfowl hunting. We have some good upland hunting. Our big game hunting is while it's not, Region 5 is not a common destination for a lot of folks for big game hunting. A lot of our locals hunt here and do well. So I would say, as far as hunter numbers and the types of species that they're hunting, I'd say we're pretty balanced. And I would attribute that just kind of to the diversity of the region and the habitats and landscapes that we have here.
Okay. Well, digging into the bird hunting a little bit, what are the main hunting opportunities as far as, which species can we find in your region, as well as, any significant changes for population numbers over past years? And if you have that available as far as reg changes, if there's any of those we ought to watch out for.
Yeah. So our mountain grouse and our mountain environments, as we spoke about earlier, we have a number of mountain ranges here, but we have pretty good mountain grouse hunting opportunities. And the two species that we have are blue. Sometimes they're called dusky grouse and rough grouse. Most hunters are going to know dusky grouse is blue grouse.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we have rough grouse hunting as well. And they're doing pretty well. They're doing pretty well this year. They can be a little bit spotty, and a lot of times it's just moving around enough. But I would encourage folks to look close around areas with water in those mountain ranges when they're hunting. Those two species. Hungarian partridge numbers seem to be doing pretty good this year. And sharp-tailed grouse numbers are a little lower across the region, but actually our biologists in the northern part of the region did report that sharp-tails were looking a little better in the northern portion of the region. And again, we have some access opportunities for sharp-tails up there. Sage grouse, everybody knows that sage grouse are, they're under the microscope. They're doing okay. And we have a fairly short season in September for sage grouse, but a lot of people aren't really going out and harvesting much for sage grouse. A lot of the hunters are share the concern from the population, but anyway, they're doing okay. Pheasants are doing well this year, and I would say hunters are going to experience really good pheasant numbers in the prime, habitat areas, especially down in the creek bottoms, cattails, river bottom corridors. I think people are going to do pretty well. Pheasants are doing well across the region. We have one of our challenges here is, I'm sorry, did I say pheasants? I meant turkeys. Turkeys are doing really well across the region. One of the challenges we have is we have a lot of turkeys in urban environments that some people love them and some people hate them, but
yeah.
Unfortunately, in some of our urban environments, it's not really allowed to hunt turkeys, so they can be kind of a hard animal to manage.
Yeah, it's funny because people always seem to stereotype turkeys as being stupid, but they seem to kind of figure things out as far as not too many hunters close into the town here. We'll just hang out there. But so if folks do want to see if they can bag a turkey, what area would suit them best that they're not going to, run into cityscapes here?
Yeah, so our ponderosa pine habitats kind of on the eastern edge of the region are okay. They're doing okay there. The access is again kind of limited. All along our foothills in the mountains, any of our mountain foothill areas can hold turkeys, and most do. And then again, of course, turkeys love living in river bottoms, and we have a number of cottonwood river bottoms and creek bottoms here in the region. And I would tell folks to try to get some permission and hunt turkeys in those areas. And I'll tell you what, a lot of landowners and folks in those areas are happy to let people go turkey hunting. Like I said, some people get pretty frustrated with them. They can be kind of a nuisance at times.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Matt. And be sure, when you're asking for that permission, let them know what you're hunting. I think too often, I guess we assume they should know what we're going to hunt. But when you're planning your hunt, which I can't stress enough, do some planning, plan well ahead if you can, because that really gives you, landowners, they don't like this last minute stuff. Some are okay with it, but let them know so that way, if you say, hey, I want to try to find some turkeys on your land, do you mind if I hunt? Where would I find them? That sort of stuff. Like you say, they may not be open to all hunting, but they go, heck yeah, get those damn turkeys out of here. So probably a good idea.
Yeah, that's right. Downrigger,
now
I can't emphasize preparation enough.
Now, if we're talking pheasants, we got a little confused there on the turkey or pheasants. Where are the best pheasant spots again?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the best pheasant spots are going to be along probably the Bighorn, Yellowstone, Musselshell River corridors. And, a lot of that's due to and then the Clark's Fork of the Yellowstone River corridor. And a lot of that's due to the agriculture that, the ag fields and stuff that are in those river bottoms and the irrigation systems. It just provides some really good habitat for pheasants. So that's where I would tell people to focus for that.
And pheasant hunting pretty good, you think, is going to be this year?
Yeah, pheasants are doing pretty well this year. I would say hunters are going to experience really good numbers in the prime habitat areas.
Okay. What about waterfowl? How's Region 5 looking for waterfowls? What do you expect for this year?
Yeah, waterfowls. I think it's going to be great. We've had really good flights. Sometimes, a lot of times for waterfowl hunters, it's the frustration of timing those flights out and getting the weather, and trying to figure out where that cold weather hits up north and pushes those big flights down in the fall. But in Region 5, we have some of the best waterfowl hunting in the state. The Bighorn River is known not only as a trout fishery, but that is an incredible place to go hunt ducks and geese. The Yellowstone and the Clarks Fork of the Yellowstone River, again, just due to the ag fields, that's some prime waterfowl hunting, and just some really great habitat for both ducks and geese along those areas. And again, field hunting's opportunities are great there, and decoys over water hunting opportunities are great as well. So I would encourage folks to get out, and those are some opportunities that landowners seem to appreciate waterfowl hunters and allow a fair amount of waterfowl hunting in our region. We do have, as far as species, we have Canada geese, many species of ducks. A few snow geese come through, and we get a few swans as well. So we've got some great waterfowl hunting.
Yeah, that is one that I don't know if it gets underestimated a little for Region 5, but I've heard the same thing. That's just a fantastic waterfowl area. So be sure and check that out. We're going to take another quick break here. And before we wrap things up, I want to talk to you, Matt, about where your hunter check stations are. What are some of the info they're looking for, and then we'll talk a bit about kind of go into a little bit more specifics on getting private hunting access and some of that. So we'll do that right after this. Hey, gang, thanks for supporting and listening to this podcast. I can't tell you how much it means to all of us that you're here. And speaking of support, we would not be able to do this podcast at all if it weren't for sponsors like Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. It is truly an honor to have Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer on our team. If you own a trailer, you ought to think about adding them to your team, too. They can service your trailer, and when it comes to repairing trailers, well, you won't find anyone better at it than Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. If it's parts you need to do your own service and repairs, well, they are the place for that. Another thing you may not know about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is they install all kinds of accessories for the truck that pulls your trailer. Whether it's just the necessary items to help your truck get the trailer down the road perfectly, or all those gadgets and bells and whistles to dress your truck up a bit and, well, make it your unique style. And here's the best part. The folks that do all those repairs and installations are real technicians. They do things the right way and do it to such a degree of precision and reliability that you can roll down the road with confidence. Whether you need your trailer bearings packed, the whole thing rewired, or the right fifth wheel, or any kind of hitch installed, you're going to know that your trailer is ready to haul what you want, worry-free. No matter if it's getting you and your four-legged coworker to the next rodeo or job, or just hauling a load to the dump, or getting the boat and RV to your favorite fishing hole, Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer has you covered. And of course, if you need a new trailer, they can set you up with a brand new Diamond C gooseneck equipment, dump trailer, or whatever else you need to haul wherever you are going, worry-free. Happy and looking good, too. Heck, they even carry an amazing line of CM truck beds that'll make your rig look and work like new. It's what they do at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They're in Missoula, or you can find them on the web at rmtte.com. That's rmtte.com. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, we're talking with Matt Ladd. He is wildlife manager for the Region 5. And Matt, we really, really appreciate your time here. You've been giving us some great information, good ideas of where we can go in that. Let's talk check stations for Region 5. Is there any information that you folks are looking for specifically for hunters that you'd like to know?
Yeah, so as a wildlife manager, the check stations that I'd talk about are the biological check stations. And we have, on the opening weekend of antelope season, we have check stations that run both days, both Saturday and Sunday, and those are at Broadview, Montana, Billings, Montana, and Big Timber. So with the locations of those check stations in mind, that could kind of clue people into where the best antelope hunting is. So, but again, Broadview, Billings, and Big Timber on the opening weekend antelope season. And then during the general season, we have check stations on the weekends at Columbus, Billings, Big Timber, and Lavina. And if folks don't know where Lavina is up on the Musselshell River and about the center of the region. But anyway, at those check stations, of course, we're checking a lot of deer now, but also upland game birds, and a few straggling antelope hunters bring antelope in late in the antelope season at those. We do check some waterfowl, but any of the game check stations that you're signed to stop at, you must stop at, whether you've been out hunting or you're going hunting. Just want to emphasize that with folks that it is a requirement to stop at those stations, whether you've been successful or not. So don't want folks to get in trouble by running a check station and maybe not stopping when they should have. So I would mention that the Columbus check station is open both Saturday and Sunday all season long. And the other Billings, Big Timber, and Lavina check stations are open both days, the opening week of the season and the closing weekend of the season. But during the middle of the season, they're only open on Sundays.
Okay. All right. Good information there for sure. Let's talk landowners here. We've touched on that a little bit, but as far as hunting access on the private lands go, say, compared to the last few years, I know you've touched on this a little bit, but how is that looking for Region 5? Have you seen more landowner cooperation over past years, the same or less?
Yeah, Downrigger, like we talked about, access to private lands can be difficult, across the state and in Region 5. We do have some really great landowners here that allow access. We also have, like I said before, 105 block management cooperators with good hunting opportunities. Our access team, along with the biologists and enforcement staff, have developed some really good relationships and increased some opportunity for elk hunting in our region over the last few years. That's been pretty exciting. So, I guess I tell hunters, hey, don't give up, and if somebody tells you no, it doesn't mean no forever. And I just really encourage people to try to get some access to public land and build those relationships with landowners.
Yeah, you've been in the ag business, so you know what it's like in dealing with those folks, which really, and I grew up in that business, and so landowners can be very receptive, but again, giving them all the information that what would you say are some of the main basic things that a hunter should talk about in approaching landowners there in Region 5? Yeah,
I think I would have to say the number one thing is just building really good relationships with people, and landowners are no different. Number two would be respectful of the private property rights. Many landowners get bombarded with requests to hunt their property, and they can't say yes to everyone. So, I think some hunters get kind of offended when landowners turn them away. But, there's probably reasons there that they don't get into great conversation in detail to discuss. And moving on from that, I think, encouraging our hunters to take really good care of the roads, don't drive on muddy roads, leaving gates as you find them, and keeping the properties clean and litter free. those are the things that landowners that allow access really appreciate the most, and it really comes down to being a good steward of the land for folks. As you talked about earlier, asking permission well in advance is important. The hunting season can be frustrating for a lot of landowners, like I said, with just the volume of requests they get and stuff. So for them to kind of schedule things well in advance is a it's a good thing for them, and many times it works out better for the hunter as well. Kind of some of that pre-planning pieces. And a lot of landowners really enjoy having hunters, especially youth hunters or first-time hunters on their places. So don't be afraid to ask. And I kind of have the feeling that a lot of hunters, once they've been told no a few times, they just kind of give up asking for permission. And I would say that's the wrong thing to do. Just be courteous and, like I said, keep developing those good relationships with landowners, and you'll find some good places to go hunting.
Yeah, for sure. So, as far as overall, Matt, what do you feel are the main challenges that you and the FWP face for Region 5? Any that you can think of?
Yeah, absolutely. We already talked about mule deer management a little bit. I'll speak to that a little bit more. One of the things that with managing CWD and mule deer management, one of the challenges is in order to kind of reduce the spread of CWD, we actually need to reduce the density of the populations. So some hunters and sportsmen may see us with pretty liberal tags and hunting opportunities in some of our CWD zones. And that's because we really actually want to reduce the number of deer there so that the disease doesn't spread across the landscape or at as high a rate, I guess. It's going to spread no matter what downrigger, but we just really want to reduce that spread. Another thing is, mule deer bucks are probably the biggest transmitter of CWD. So we actually one of our goals is in those CWD zones is lowering the buck to doe ratios to down below 10%. And we're talking 10 or less bucks per 100 does. With those bucks moving around from doe group to doe group, they can really, if they're carrying the disease, they can do a lot of spreading and damage there. So I would say mule deer management, trying to figure out what else is going on with mule deer and that CWD management. Those are big challenges that we have for hunters and what they can contribute to help. I really want to encourage hunters to get their animals tested. Whitetail, mule deer, moose, elk, get those animals tested. And that gives us a lot of information on where we have the disease and where we need to be focusing, some of our management efforts. Other challenges in the region, elk hunting access, we talked about that some. I think that's kind of a challenge in a lot of places in the West. I tell you, one of the big challenges that we've kind of faced recently in the region is bear conflict management. We've had some pretty significant habitat changes due to fire along some of our mountain front areas, and we're really seeing some concentrations of bears on natural food sources. Bears have a huge home range, and they'll travel a long ways to get to a place that has natural food sources, especially this time of year in the fall, late summer and fall, when they're entering hyperphagia. And that's when they eat a lot to prepare for hibernation in the wintertime. I think some of the conflict stuff is due to just an influx of a lot of new folks coming to Montana and, increased outdoor recreation. A lot of more people out on the landscape doing stuff, and they're out doing stuff where bears live. So we have been consistently spreading the message about being bear aware, moving attractants, managing your garbage with bear resistant containers, keeping a clean area, timing your garbage collection, taking down bird feeders and stowing away barbecue grills and things like that really attract bears. It's a serious issue for our communities and public safety, and we really need everybody to do their part to help prevent these conflicts before they occur. And some of those key pieces I mentioned, that we'd really encourage people to help us out with that. And like hunters can help by keeping a clean camp and, proper food storage. And the same things that apply at home, apply those in the field when they're out.
Yeah. And, we often hear about some of these bear conflicts that really can be avoided. And, we hear the term Bearware a lot, but it really is just that for hunters, especially. I want to remind you that, if for some reason you have to leave a kill site, now you're coming back to it, or maybe, for you archery hunters, you've had to track it and find it for a ways, and now you're zeroing in and you're approaching that kill site. Really approach that with some caution, because that's where the bears are going to go too. They look for the path of least resistance, and hey, there's an elk laying there or a deer laying there, I'm going to nibble on that. So be careful when you're coming back into your area, because a bear might be on that site. So I would really watch that careful. What do you? Go ahead.
One thing I would contribute there, sorry to interrupt you, Downrigger, is,
that's all right.
For those hunters to communicate with other hunters that are using those same trailheads in different areas is, if a hunter kills an elk, for example, and, has an elk carcass out there, and maybe they've removed all the meat, but, that little bit of stuff that's left over there when you pack an elk out, let those other hunters know of where that elk kill is, so they don't go stumbling into a grizzly or a bear that's on that kill site and find themselves in a world of hurt. Like you said, Downrigger, a lot of this stuff can be prevented.
Right, for sure. This question might be a little tough one for you, but what would you say you are the most proud of for Region 5 that you guys have accomplished there?
Yeah, that's not a difficult question at all, Downrigger. I have to say, I've been here a long time, and I'm really proud of our staff that we have here in Region 5. Each of our divisions, whether it's the enforcement division, the wildlife division, the fisheries division, our maintenance division, our parks and rec division, our front office administrative staff, our folks out at the fish hatcheries, just everybody here in Region 5, we really operate as a team. And I think that really shows through. I mean, we're a tight-knit bunch of folks who really try to help each other out. And we cross division boundaries and work on different projects together. And I think that really shows in our high level of customer service. And I know folks, the public, they don't always maybe find what they're looking for from Montana FWP, but we really do try to do our best to serve the folks in the places where we can. And I just really think it shows the level and the quality of staff we have here in the region. Really proud of these folks.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. And if you listen to this podcast a lot, you've heard me say this before, but I can't stress enough how vital it is to share that information when you hear that FWP is looking for input on this area or that area. As hunters, and I've been guilty of this too, we all tend to be kind of armchair wildlife managers, and it's real easy on that side to say what they should have done here, should have done there. But so often, when I talk to hunters out there and fishermen out there, did you report that? Did you talk about that to anybody? Well, no, I didn't talk about it. Well, that's what you got to do. Matt can't be in every hunting district all the time, and so they rely on you folks out there to give them that information. So be sure and do that, because really your success is, what we all depend on. I mean, people forget FWP is not funded through tax dollars. It's funded by hunters and fishermen. So they want you to do well, but you got to let them know. So be sure and do that, because I know, Matt, you and your staff really do like to get that information.
Yeah, absolutely, Downrigger. We rely a lot on public information and information from hunters and anglers and just recreationalists out using the resources. And I can't express to folks how invaluable a lot of that info is from us. And like you said, we're just a few people on a very large landscape. And we rely heavily and encourage folks to come and talk to us, and talks to us about, tough topics too. And, express frustrations they have. And, sometimes it's a little bit of realization of places we have issues, but also sometimes it's a little bit of an education opportunity for folks that we get to share some information maybe that they didn't know.
Right. Yeah. You got to remember, gang, that there's a method to why they're doing what they're doing. So, as you covered, sometimes you're for muleys or deer, whatever, you say, hey, we really need to get that population down to stop the spread. And hunters that don't know all that may take it the wrong way and say, well, gee, they're really opening that way too much. Well, there's a reason behind it. So again, just, if you got a beef, express it respectively. And otherwise, that information is going to help all of you a lot more. Now, Matt, let's have you take off your wildlife manager hat and put on the orange vest and and be a hunter for a bit. When you get a chance to go out and hunt, what's your favorite thing to go after in Region 5?
Downrigger, I love it all. I really do. Like I said, I was an outdoor kid, but I have to say I'm an avid archery hunter. I really enjoy hunting whitetails, and I use traditional archery equipment, longbows and recurves. So I have to get really, really close, and limiting my shots to about 25 yards in. And as you know, whitetail deer are probably the most keen of all our species as far as their senses go. You don't get away with much when you're hunting a whitetail at close ranges. So I have to say that that's probably one of my most enjoyed species to hunt. And I'll tell you, spring turkey hunting is a whole nother podcast in itself. And I get a little wacky and over the top during spring turkey season. So if you ever want to talk about that, bring it on. It's one of my passions as well. But like I said, I'd have to say that archery hunting whitetails is probably my favorite.
Well, I'm going to take you up on that. Come next spring, I'm going to hit you up on that, on the turkey stuff. That is a lot of fun. So overall, it sounds like Region 5 is looking pretty dang good and things are going well there. Is there anything we haven't covered, Matt, that you want to make sure to let folks know about?
I could blab all day long with you, but we should probably spare your listeners that. I would just really encourage folks to get out and enjoy our state, and all our state has to offer, and use this resource. And even if you're not a hunter, just getting out and observing the wildlife world is it's quite an experience, and one that I think everybody should take some advantage of. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come on with you today, Downrigger, and it's been a joy, and great questions, and kind of lets us get some of our information out to folks, and maybe inspire some thought and some questions that folks can call in and ask us more questions about, and we welcome that. So I guess overall, one of the biggest things I would encourage folks to do is communicate with us, and don't be hesitant to come into one of our regional offices, and especially the Region 5 office, and talk to the staff that are working on the things that you're interested in or passionate about, and we're happy to help.
Matt, do you mind if I put your email in our podcast description in case folks have questions for you after listening to this?
Yeah, not a problem at all. You can certainly do that.
All right, folks. Well, when you after you get done listening to this whole podcast, and feel free, it's up there forever. So, listen to it again if you want to go back to a certain area of the podcast and that. But then just go down to that where it says links, and I'll put a link that just says click here to contact Matt, and it'll pull up your email and fill in the spot for Matt's email address for you automatically, and boom, you can send him an email, ask him any questions that you want, or give a call out there. But yeah, get back to Matt, let him know what you think, what your questions are. Matt, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us, and good luck to all of you and your staff and all that, and thanks for what you do out there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Downrigger. It's been a pleasure.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is Region 5. Take a look. listen to the podcast again, as I said, go through those links that I've put down there, and then get after it. Go check out Region 5, especially if you haven't done that. If you haven't been to Region 5 yet, go check it out. There's some great opportunities for you. So be sure and come back here, because we're going to have other doing the same thing for every region across the state, so you'll get a good idea of what's going on in these other regions. We'll have more of this series as we continue on here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Until then, folks, take care out there. Be safe. Be good to each other. And we'll see you next time here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.